Welcome to the 707, a weekly half-hour program produced by KRCB, a service of NorCal Public Media. The 707 features voices and stories from your community, stories about the local impact of federal policies, and stories that show how we are connected to each other. I'm your host, Michelle Marquis. This week, I'm bringing in my colleague, Shandra back, KRCB's bilingual staff reporter, who's been working on a story for a statewide radio news program called the California Report about immigrants and taxes. As we spoke about this story in our weekly news meeting, it became apparent that she had much more to share than what will fit in the time allowed. We agreed it would be great to tell the whole story in this longer format on the 707. Here's Shandra.
Thanks, Michelle. Federal policies have changed in recent years, with the government asking for information about immigrants from the IRS, a development in 2024 that was a significant break from any policy before. And changes in H.R. 1, which President Trump called his One Big Beautiful Bill Act, were not very beautiful for immigrants. They're seeing reduced or non-existent refunds, a change from what they've historically experienced during tax season. Undocumented immigrants can pay their taxes using something called an ITIN, or Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. The IRS issues these to people who are not eligible for a Social Security number, and it allows them to pay their taxes. I spoke with Martha Valencia, an immigration consultant and tax preparer in Santa Rosa.
I noticed he started getting really slow from the first week that we started doing taxes. Usually, the first 2 weeks of tax season, everybody runs to do their taxes. We hardly can place the people inside the building. Sometimes there's a line outside. And I noticed this year it was pretty slow. And at the beginning I thought, well, it's because the bookkeepers are really slow. They haven't been given the W-2s yet. But then as the days start going, it was the same. And very little people came, and a few people came at the beginning with an ITIN number. And as soon as I told them that they were not getting the refunds, they were very unhappy, and they didn't want to file their taxes because they said the only reason that we file taxes is because we get children's tax credit, and we're not getting it this year, so what's the point of doing taxes? So I guess they talked to their friends and family. That's how clients do. They go talk to them. We're not getting nothing. Let's not do it. It's just they might transfer our information to the immigration department that we have no legal documents, so it is very unsafe. And a lot of people, they start coming. They're not showing up.
When you tell people about the refund or the lack of a refund, will some people still file and will some people just leave? What does the interaction usually look like?
Usually I talk to my clients at the beginning. If they have an ITIN number, I am really honest with them. This year you're not getting $2,000 credit. You might get $500, but that's about it. And some people says, well, I will do it anyway because I know eventually I need to do it. Some kids have, they go to college and they need their taxes for that. Some places they need that for their apartment for rent. And there are reasons that they do need the taxes, so they file taxes. But some clients say, you know what, I'm not going to file because I'm not getting any refunds. And what's the point to pay you to do it if I'm not getting anything or maybe hardly anything? And sometimes they do have to pay a lot of money. You know how they claim a lot of exemptions when they file the forms? And because they knew that the credits will cover for the money they're supposed to pay back. And now that their credits are not there, they end up with a big debt with the IRS, and they don't want to file.
Okay. And so how many of your clients would you say are ITIN?
I probably have at least like 80% of my clients are ITIN numbers. And a lot of because I also do immigration, a lot of my own clients have legal status. But I could say probably 75-80% of my clients have ITIN number.
And so of those 75 or 80%, how many would you say are not filing this year?
Well, probably, like I said, maybe at least 60% are not filing taxes.
Of all of your clientele or of the ITIN filers?
The ITIN filers.
So you can easily say then over half of ITIN filers this year, at least through you, have not filed.
They have not filed through me. So they might went somewhere else. I don't know. But they're pretty, I've been doing taxes for more than 25 years, and this is the only year that I've been like that, so scary.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so you've been doing this over 25 years. Are there years where you're seeing, dips? Or is this pretty out of the ordinary?
It is pretty out of the ordinary. Last year started going a little slow because according to people, the ice was in Sonoma County. So a lot of people called me to cancel appointments because according to them, the ice was in Sebastopol Road or Stony Point Road, and they were afraid to leave their homes. But it was not a big drop. This year is a big drop.
So is this the biggest drop that you've seen in your career?
Not even during the pandemic was bad. I did great during the pandemic. People used to come, drop their paperwork. I'll do the paperwork. They always come, pick it up, and leave. But not even during the pandemic, I had a drop like this.
So you would say this is the worst?
Out of my history, yes, this is the worst year.
Wow. And so what does that mean for you and your business?
Well, it's very uncertain because we still have to pay the bills. We have to pay the rent, all the utilities here, employees. And if the money doesn't come in, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Because you save, I save money out of the 3 months for the whole year. And if the money didn't come in, I don't know what's going to happen with the business. I might have to close.
Wow. Do you have any hope that people might still file or not so much?
I do have hope that they eventually they have to file taxes because that's the law, and that they come, they have to move forward because they're not going anywhere. They're still here. And, when you don't file your taxes, the state and the federal get the money from your paycheck. So you have to file taxes eventually. So my hope is that even if they come late, they will still come. I am concerned about my business, but I am also concerned about my clients because I know what is to live in fair. And for them, must be very scary to go through these things. So we just hope the best for them too.
Valencia is not the only tax preparer experiencing a significant drop in clients this year. Gil Alcazar of Santa Rosa has been doing people's taxes for 37 years. Alcazar says he has about 200 fewer clients this year than last year. He says that last year customers were concerned that their documentation would be shared with the federal government.
Many people, they did not file because they fear that the IRS will share information with the immigration department, which I don't think that can be possible, but many people, they are scared about it and they don't want to file their taxes.
He says despite the fear and the drop in business, he still has hope that things will work out.
Last week, another tax preparer stopped by my office and say, what are we gonna do, Gil? We have to go outside and find another job because how can we gonna survive if not many people are filing taxes? So I tell my employees the same thing. You don't have to worry. Sooner or later, they have to file. It's gonna be harder this season, but they will.
And do you believe that they will?
Yes, they will. Even though, let me tell you, many people are leaving the country. Many people, if they see that they're paying a lot of taxes, they say, no, I'm just gonna go home. I'm gonna go back to my country. But because every time it's harder to live here, and they are waiting to the end of the year to get a refund for their child. And if they're not getting it, there is many of them, they say, there is no need to be here. That was my only savings at the end of the year. And they are planning just not to file and leave.
So what are immigrants themselves saying about taxes this year? A man who asked to go by the name Velasco spoke with me about why he is choosing not to file taxes. He's lived in the U.S. for 24 years and paid taxes for the majority of that time.
I was filing my tax return, and it seemed like the right thing to do. I felt like I was contributing because, well, that's part of the deal, isn't it? Not necessarily as a citizen, but simply by being in this country. You have to abide by the rules. After all, that's how the country keeps running. But lately, given their response, I've changed my tune. It's true that paying taxes is our responsibility, but that responsibility also grants us the right to receive benefits in return. So when you realize you're paying in, yet not receiving the benefits you're entitled to, that's when the discontent sets in. You start thinking, no, this makes no sense. Why should I pay taxes? As a matter of fact, I haven't filed for the last 2 years, and I'm not doing so out of irresponsibility. Rather, it's because I currently get paid in cash, so I haven't received or requested any official tax forms. But to sum it all up, I do find it unfair that a person pays into the system only to be denied benefits when they actually need them. This holds true regardless of one's immigration status. Even if you're undocumented in this country, you still end up paying taxes just the same.
Velasco objects to the way he and other immigrants are being treated.
But nowadays, when you realize that there's no support, or rather no intention to support you, I'm going to speak plainly here, it happens when a president tries to kick you out of the country, even when you're actively contributing to it. So it doesn't exactly give you the desire to comply. You don't feel like saying, oh, well, I have to pay my taxes because they're treating me so well. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The president says, we're going to kick you out of the country because you don't have legal status. Yet when it comes to collecting taxes, they certainly want to do that, don't they? So I believe that is the primary reason for my own discontent, and I suspect for the discontent of many, many other people.
In the next segment of the 707, we'll hear from a tax preparer in Southern California to find out if this is a statewide trend. This is KRCB.
I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News with a little something to kickstart your mornings. Sonoma First News is a weekday morning podcast with the top local stories and weather updates from across Sonoma County. From Petaluma to Bodega Bay, Sonoma First News has you covered. Subscribe now through KRCB's website, on the NorCal mobile app, or wherever you get your podcasts. Sonoma First News from Sonoma County's NPR station, KRCB FM.
Welcome back to the 707 on KRCB. I'm your host, Michelle Marquis. My colleague Shandra Back is bringing you today's story on an alarming trend in the immigrant community.
Fears of being deported by DHS are keeping undocumented people from filing their taxes. They're also not incentivized to file because tax credits they once got are now gone. We heard from two preparers in Sonoma County who are noticing this with their clientele. Hayde Vigil is a tax preparer in Pomona, a city in eastern Los Angeles County.
Some people say that since the IRS is now collaborating with immigration authorities, if the IRS requests their information, the authorities will then have the address where they can go find them.
Vigil says that even though many are afraid to leave their home to do their taxes, some immigrants are still coming in to get their taxes prepared.
I've asked the clients who do come in, the ones who have ITINs, and they say, yes, we come in feeling scared, but those of us who are coming know that it's absolutely crucial that we get this done. They acknowledge, though, that a lot of other people simply don't want to take that risk.
I asked Vigil if the majority of her clients use ITINs, and her answer was surprising.
No, the majority are people who have proper documentation.
Wow. And yet you're still seeing only half the usual volume?
Yes.
So maybe there are people with full documentation who aren't showing up due to fear?
Maybe they'll just come in at the very last minute instead.
Beyond the financial impact of losing tax credits, beyond the fear of your information being shared or being deported, undocumented immigrants also have to deal with the emotional and financial impact of federal policies on their children. Claudia is from Mexico. She's lived here for 22 years and is undocumented. And her youngest son, who is a citizen, is not getting a child tax credit this year for the first time. She tells me about her worries for him. He's 13 years old.
Even if you don't tell them directly, they see it all through social media. They see it, they know about it, they watch TV, they look at cell phones and computers. Through so many different channels, they become aware of what's going on. And whether they want to or not, they end up worrying about it.
Claudia says despite doing things the right way, she feels federal policies are not incentivizing her to do so.
tiene uno la esperanza que en un futuro
Because you hold on to the hope that in the future, well, that you'll be able to do things the right way. In this country, that means being in good standing, paying your taxes, keeping everything in order, and not getting into trouble with anyone, not with the police or anything like that. It's what you're always trying to avoid, trouble, so that you can stay in the clear. For one thing, you have your family. For another, this isn't your home country, so you know you really have to keep your nose clean. So, well, the thing is, there doesn't seem to be any hope for people like us, does there? So if there's no hope, should you keep paying your taxes or shouldn't you? That's the lingering doubt. What's the point of paying? I've certainly had to pay up. In fact, 2 years ago, because I missed the filing deadline, I ended up having to pay something like $3,500. I had missed the deadline back then, even though I was working 2 jobs. So you start to wonder, what is the point? You've done everything right, kept everything strictly above board, made sure there were no red flags anywhere, always trying to pay every single fee and charge just to stay in good standing. But in the end, there's nothing for you, is there?
no hay algo, ¿verdad?
Josh Stalick is policy director for the California Immigrant Policy Center, who says immigrants make a significant financial contribution to the state and the country.
Undocumented taxpayers are extremely important to the national economy and to California's economy. So a study from the Bay Area Economic Institute and UC Merced suggested or analyzed and determined that undocumented workers generate nearly 5% of California's gross domestic product. And overall, undocumented immigrants contributed $8.5 billion in state and local taxes in 2022 in California.
What are the ramifications if all undocumented immigrants stopped paying taxes?
We could be looking at an $8.5 billion loss in revenue. And that's coming at a time which would obviously significantly impact the state's budget. Federal budget reconciliation bill from last July, H.R. 1, is already cutting a massive amount of federal funding for the state safety net system, including Medi-Cal and SNAP, what we call CalFresh in California, most commonly referred to as food stamps. Even though Republicans in Congress tried to sell H.R. 1 as cracking down on undocumented individuals' access to public benefits, undocumented individuals were never eligible for federally funded Medicaid or federally funded CalFresh benefits. The folks who are really losing eligibility are lawfully present humanitarian immigrants, potentially 200,000 immigrant Californians losing Medi-Cal and 75,000 losing CalFresh as a result of H.R. 1. I mean, immigrant taxpayers, and particularly undocumented immigrant taxpayers, do essentially subsidize many of our federal safety net programs because they contribute to them, but are generally excluded from benefiting from them. And more than a third of tax dollars paid by undocumented immigrants go to payroll taxes that fund programs like Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance. There is sort of this bigger systemic impact as well, because historically those programs have relied on undocumented taxpayers' payroll taxes to help pay, who are essentially paying into those systems, even though they won't be able to receive those benefits unless they are able to adjust their immigration status at some point.
Abby Royce is the vice president of research at the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. She paints a picture of the widespread impact should a large portion of those with ITINs decide not to pay their taxes.
Other studies have shown that undocumented immigrants maintain very high effective tax rates. So the average state and local tax rate of 7.1%, that's higher than the rate paid by the top 1% of earners nationally, which I think says a lot about how much, maybe disproportionately, this community is contributing to taxes. But the systems, that support and allow these immigrants to pay taxes is at risk, like you said. When we were conducting interviews about this last year, the IRS was in sort of these unprecedented negotiations with DHS, with the Department of Homeland Security, to share that taxpayer information. Obviously, all of these things are moving very quickly. We talked to one immigrant services provider who offers tax assistance to undocumented immigrants. And they basically just said to us, if this taxpayer information does, in fact, get released to other departments, the ITIN is going to lose all of the trust that it currently has, and it probably won't ever gain it back. Or if it does, it will take years to gain that trust back for people to feel comfortable enough to use their ITIN numbers to file taxes. So that has huge implications for a community in the state that pays quite a bit in taxes. I mean, this is $10.6 billion in state and local taxes paid by Californians who are undocumented, another $13 billion in federal taxes. And again, dollars that are paid to the federal government despite being excluded from many federal benefits that $13 billion is going towards. So I think there's a lot of sort of irony there, and a lot at risk, and that's being sort of jeopardized right now.
I'm your host, writer, and producer of this program, Michelle Marquis. Story and interviews for today's episode by Shandra Back, with editing support by Queena Kim. Podcasts are available at krcb.org/the707. Email topic and guest suggestions to the707@krcb.org. This show is a service of NorCal Public Media. Our president and CEO is Darren Lachelle.